Hi everyone, welcome back to Novel Nomad and welcome to my winter wrap up. This is my seasonal wrap up for winter this year and it was kind of a giant reading 3 months. I had a very good time reading and I'm just going to go through some of the books that I still have on my shelves. Some of the books that aren't featured here I read via audiobook or on Overdrive or from the library and have already been returned. So I thought it'd be really fun if I go through the books that I physically have here and their ratings. I'll do a short mini wrap up of each book, and if you're interested or want to discuss any of the books, let me know down below, and I am very happy and willing to discuss all of the books because basically the lowest star rating any of these books got is a 3 out of 5. They were phenomenal. I had such a fantastic reading month for winter, and let's get straight into it because I have to stop gushing and start reviewing. So the first book for winter was Bel Canto by Ann Patchett. This one is an absolutely beautiful lyrical piece of magic realism set in a South American country where a whole house full of guests and an opera singer have been taken hostage by a local guerrilla group. It received 4 stars from me and I absolutely fell in love with the writing. The next book, or rather series, I read was the Captive Prince series called Captive Prince, Prince's Gambit, and also King's Rising by C.S. Pacat. This is an absolutely intriguing series. I was only meant to read the first one for book club and I ended up reading the entire series because it was that good. I could not put it down. It follows Damon, who is a young prince, but his father dies suddenly and his brother turns against him, sends him off to be a slave in a warring country, and he becomes the slave of the prince of that country, Laurent. And what happens, the political intrigue, is absolutely amazing. So good. Trigger warnings for the first book, but as it goes through, the intensity just builds and the outcome at the end is absolutely phenomenal. The next book I read is the first in the Magpie Lord series by KJ Charles. This is a Victorian crime mystery drama where a young detective is sent to help the Magpie Lord, who is a reclusive lord who's just come back from being banished in China, and he is suddenly the lord to his estate because his older brothers and father died. So he comes back and many bad things have been happening whilst he's been banished, and he gets this young detective in to help him. I read the entire series. I highly recommend. I gave the first book 5 stars, second book 4 stars, third book 5 stars again. Really rounds out. I really thoroughly enjoyed it, and also there's a gay relationship in this, so that was really great to see. Next was a buddy read that I read with the ever lovely Kate Howe, and that was our 5th foray into Elizabeth George in For the Sake of Eleanor. This was a fantastic book set in Cambridge where a young girl is murdered. I did not guess what happened. It kept me on the edge of my seat, and the character development for Linley Havers and for their relationships is amazing. So obviously I gave this one a 5 stars. The next one was also a buddy read with the lovely Kate Howe, and that is The Last Camel Died at Noon, Elizabeth Peters. This isn't the book, this is the book before. I don't have the book, I listened to it on Overdrive, but it was a really fun addition to the Amelia Peabody series with things turning a little bit mystical and Indiana Jones-like for their latest adventure. And I thought it was quite refreshing for the series that can get a little bit methodic in its delivery. So that one got 4 stars from me. Next was part of Tome Topple, and I read All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. This is a phenomenal World War II story about a young girl who's blind in North Brittany and a young boy who is pulled into the Nazi service, but all he wants to do is make radios and survive. And their stories are beautifully presented, the writing is amazing, and the direction this story took was incredibly beautiful. I highly recommend, even if you're probably a bit tired by a lot of the World War II stories that are coming out lately, this one is very well worth it. It received 5 stars. Continuing on with my Tome Topple reads, I read The Daughter of the Forest by Juliette Marillier. This is a retelling of a Celtic fable of the 7 swans, and it is an absolutely epic piece of fantasy. Beautiful characters, amazingly developed retelling, and the writing is phenomenal. and it is the first in a trilogy. Not that I read them all straight away, but I have the second one ready to go. This one obviously also got 5 stars. Next was a book from my sci-fi fantasy book club, and that was Ancillary Justice by Anne Leckie. This was a very interesting sci-fi. It wouldn't normally be something that I pick up. It was a little bit slow to begin with, so I do recommend sticking it through, but in the last 100 pages it zoomed by. It was so amazing. The build-up was totally worth it, even if it did feel like a bit of a slow slog to begin with. I gave this a 3.5 to 4 stars. Next was Wildwood by Colin Molloy and illustrated by Carson Ellis. This was a really cute middle grade. It was very well developed for a middle grade story that they actually had a very intense plot. It did feel a little bit like Narnia in a way, although the characters had a little bit more gothic elements to them, and I think the story will take a very gothic turn. It is part of a trilogy. This is the first in the trilogy. I haven't read the rest of them yet, but I am quite keen to get onto that. I gave this one 4 stars, not only for the depth of the story, but also for the illustrations. Next is This House of Grief by Helen Garner. This was a very interesting depiction of a real court case that occurred in Australia from 2005 all the way through to about 2015. This was an incredible case about a man who was on trial for the murder of his 3 children, and the way Helen Garner presents it is she gives you all the facts without heavy bias, and you are left to determine if you believe he was guilty or not. So I highly recommend this one. It is an incredibly interesting way of depicting a courtroom, court scene, and also a very emotional case. Helen Garner also presents this almost as a story and a pacing itself, so it is quite good if you're only used to reading fiction. It's a quite good foray into non-fiction. I gave this one 4 stars, and I will be interested in reading her other non-fiction works. Next we have the next buddy read with the beautiful Kate Howe, and that is The Fleet Street Murders by Charles Finch. This is the 3rd book in the Charles Lennox series, where Charles tries to run for Parliament at the same time as solving a very interesting Fleet Street murder. Now, I did not see that coming, and I thought things towards the end felt a little bit rushed, but otherwise it was great to have a very complex view of the main character Charles Lennox's life, and I thought it was really, really well presented. I gave this one 4 stars, and I'm so keen to read the rest of the series. Next is Bound for Sin by Tess LeSue. I was sent this as an advanced reader's copy. It's out now, so if you're interested in reading this, this is the 2nd book in the Frontiers of the Heart novels. I really love the first one, which is called Bound for Eden. Bound for Sin is actually very fun. It follows a mother and her group of children as she is grieving for the loss of her husband, but as in the mid-1800s in America, the husband took the eldest son all the way across to the gold fields of California looking for a fortune. Unfortunately, the father has died, so the mother is on her way to rescue her son again. But of course she needs help, so she advertises for help, and she wants a frontiersman who can protect her and her family on their way across the Californian gold fields. I really loved the characters in this. The eccentricity of the kids was amazing. You could see this was written by a mum, and I think all mums would love this because you just have those things that the kids were saying. You're just like, oh my god, that's so embarrassing, but it's just so beautiful and heartfelt. I also love that it's a slow burn romance, which is some of my favourites because you actually get to know the characters as they get to know each other. I definitely gave this one 5 stars, and I'll be doing a written review which I'll link down below, so go check that out on my book blog. One of my absolute favourite books for winter, and it was perfect time for reading it. So it's just come out, and if you want to read a book this winter as it gets cooler, I definitely recommend Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. I gave this one 5 stars. It is phenomenal. The writing is exquisite. If you didn't like Uprooted, try this one. It is quite different because it is a retelling of Rumpelstiltskin, but it features 3 very strong, powerful women who all fall into the forces of some very unruly men and fairies, and they help each other to conquer their own fears. But it's also making the most out of the situation you're in. So it is absolutely an amazing book. It's also written from a Jewish aspect because Rumpelstiltskin has Jewish origins in the fairy tale, and the way Naomi Novik presents this is utterly amazing. I loved Miriam. She was my absolute favourite character. I associated with her so much, and she just gave such a strength and heart to this story that if she wasn't in it, it would be missing without her. Next is a buddy read that I read with Kate Howe, and that is A Town Like Alice by Neville Shute. This was really, really surprising. I wasn't sure how I was going to feel going into this novel, as Neville Shute was a writer from the 30s going through the 40s and 50s, and he was English, but he lived in Australia, so many of his stories actually take place in Australia or heavily feature Australian characters. So there was that stereotype that I was expecting to have, like the good A characters and things like that, but also A Town Like Alice features a female protagonist, and I was worried that I was going to get that classic 1930s 40 female lead character who doesn't really know anything and needs men to help her out. Oh, I was so mistaken with my beliefs. I gave this one 5 stars because it is about a woman who strived and constantly survived things that which she was forced to do during the Second World War. There is such a respect and honesty given to the female character. She is so in-depth, she is resourceful, she's clever, she's feminine, she has such a range of emotion and feeling, and that really connected me to this story, so I gave it 5 stars. It is about a woman's struggle through World War II, and after it, in her struggle to make a life and for herself with the man that she loves. Next, the rather more disappointing book of my winter reading was The Mountain Between Us by Charles Martin. I read this for book club. It was very slow. I did feel quite bored at times, but I did like the characters. I thought they were quite resourceful. They were really interesting to read about, but I think if it was about half the length it would have been a really amazing novella or a short novel. I thought that would have been amazing development, but otherwise it was okay. But I recommend this over the movie. If you've seen the movie and you thought that was okay, read the book. You'll definitely like it. This one got a 3 stars from me. Jumping in with a very short poetry collection, that is Maya Angelou's Phenomenal Women. I found this in a secondhand bookstore. It only contains 4 poems, but it is 4 poems celebrating women and 4 outstanding poems. I've only read a few of her poetry works before, so it was just great to have this little snippet of such amazing poetry from Maya Angelou. I automatically gave this one 5 stars. The last book on my winter wrap-up is The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. This is the 2nd book in my non-fiction challenge, and it was a very interesting book. It was actually a science biography, but it wasn't just about the science surrounding Henrietta Lacks's cells and what they did for medical science. It was also around the ethics of medical science and the use of human cells, and also about Henrietta Lacks's family, which the author Rebecca Skloot had a lot of contact with throughout this novel. I thought it was amazing presentation, and if you are worried about getting into more scientific non-fiction, perhaps you should try this one. It's a bit of a blend of science, biography and history, so it is definitely well worth checking out. I gave this one 4 stars. Alright, so thank you very much for joining me for my winter wrap up. Any of the books that I didn't get to put in here, I'll leave in my list down below. They're quite sizable, so I do apologise. But if you're interested in reading any of these, let me know down below. I'll be happy to talk about them further. And what was your favourite book of the season you just finished, be it summer or winter? So I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye!